How are you doing, folks? Great to see you here. Great to be back in Cork again. I absolutely always love Cork. I have a few stories to tell from 20, 30 years ago, but maybe not in this forum. So just to get an idea of who I'm talking to here today, how many of you are here on your early in your career, first job, second job? Yourself, okay. People along their career a little bit? You're thinking of changing job? Yeah. What about people thinking of changing career? Yourself? And is there anybody here that doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 honest people. Fantastic. Well, I love being in a room with people that have the same disease as I have. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start talking to you a little bit about myself and my journey. So vocation wellness, so that's what I call my practice. And the reason I kind of chose vocation wellness. So first of all, wellness is something that I'm into in a big way. Physical, mental, social. In fact, the 5 pillars of wellness, there was a study done by Gallup back in 2010. There's 5 pillars of wellness. So there's mental, there's physical, there's social, there's community, and career. Career comes out as the number 1 pillar of wellness. Vocation then is, I suppose, a lot of times, those of us that grew up in Ireland, we think of vocation as nursing or going on to be a priest or a nun or something like that. Anybody remember that when you were growing up? A few smiles. And then a little bit about myself then and my journey. So that's not quite where I grew up, but it kind of looks like it. I grew up in Donegal. And I suppose my worldview, I suppose there's this idea that we have free will, but do we actually really have free will? We're influenced by our surroundings, how we grew up, who we hang out with. Then we grow up a little bit, we have kids, and we're influenced by everything around their lives and so on and so forth. So when I was growing up and looking at a career, there was fishing or there was tourism. So I kind of looked at the boats and I said, geez, do we really want to be out in the North Atlantic freezing every day? Not really. So I went on and did hotel management, and I absolutely loved it. Went up to the Big Smoke, up to Dublin, and ended up down here in Cork as well. The company that I did my training with had a hotel down here as well. The Silver Springs, do you know it? Yeah. So I enjoyed that for a few years, and I'm still alive to tell the tale. So I kind of said, look, I need to calm down a little bit, do something with my life. Do I want to continue in that journey, which was fantastic, but the trade-off, there was a trade-off there. In return for a fantastic career, you had to sacrifice your weekends, late night, stuff like that. So while I was deciding what I wanted to do, I was always good with my hands growing up, so I just took a paintbrush in my hand, put a few handwritten notes in through a few letterboxes, and I started painting and decorating, and I grew that business out. So I do home renovations, tiling, painting, decorating, maintenance, and believe it or not, I still do that as a day job today. I mean, it pays the bills. So I myself am in career transition, but I'm taking a long-term approach for it. Now, I still absolutely love what I do, which is good, but I am getting older. But the point I'm trying to make to you today is, even if you do like what you do, you can think of doing something that you're passionate about. If you don't like what you're doing, or if you're returning to the workplace or anything like that, there is a way of getting to where you want to go. There's several ways. I'll just tell you a bit about my way. So a few years ago, I'd always been interested in psychology. People, I suppose I did it in the hotel business, really. You were always kind of there as a counsellor. So I went back and studied psychology in Maynooth a couple of years ago. And I'm currently in Trinity now doing a postgraduate in workplace wellness. So that's where I'm coming from. But I have kids, I have bills to pay, so I couldn't afford to actually take time off and go to college full time. But if you look around the place here today, you have night courses down here. You have, who else have you got down there? You have a couple of Kerry colleges down there as well. Springboard, fantastic resource. So, I mean, the course I'm doing at the moment, €300. Can't go wrong with that, do you know? So there are ways around going where you're going. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of science just to explain. So, finding what's right for you, there's a few things you have to consider about. So, mainly what I'm going to go into is goal setting. Now, as creatures, so evolutionary, all animals have goals. So you set a goal in the morning to go out and catch a mouse, catch your dinner, whatever you do. You also have a goal to reproduce, you know, have a few little bunnies running around the place, the procreation of the species. So all animals do have goals. And we share a lot in common with animals in terms of our chemistry, our brains, very similar to most animals. But there's a thing called embodied cognition. So to live in the world that we live in, to do what we do, we have to live in the body that we live in. I mean, they say dolphins are very, very intelligent. They're intelligent enough to build a house. It's one little problem with dolphins. They don't have hands like us, and they live in a different place to us. But just... Now, you don't have to know all this. I'm just going to point out a few little pieces of the brain there that do matter. Do you know, in terms of when you are setting a goal, you use your motivation and your fear to complement each other. So this little... Oh, sorry. So that little fella down there, that's called the amygdala. That lad is always on. He's the fear center of the brain. This guy here, then, the purple fella, that's called the hippocampus. Your schema of the world operates from that part of the brain. So you have an idea of how things should be, and that guy is always watching to see. So if you have a goal in mind, are things going well? Yeah, no problem. Sometimes this little fella shouts up, there's an obstacle in the way. This fella will switch him off if there's no need for your fear to be going. Now, if you are in a job that causes you continuous stress, physiologically what can happen is that guy will enlarge and this guy will shrink. Now, if you go back to a state of normalness in your life, homeostasis, the two guys, they'll go back to their normal shape and size, but sometimes this guy can stay enlarged. That causes problems later on down the line. Now, there's another part of the brain I want to show you there as well. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary, I'm going to talk about them later on. So essentially that's the oldest part of the brain. You know, it's so many million years old. It's as old as the earth itself. This part of the brain here is your executive function. So your goal setting happens there. But if you come under stress, what happens? The red mist descends and you revert back to this guy shouting up at you. So, I mean, a typical thing, stage fright. I was here chatting to you for a few minutes to start off, just to relax myself down so that I could actually physically think, do you know, so that I could deliver this to you. Now, what happens in the body, so motivation and fear. Interestingly, you all know about dopamine. That's your motivational chemical. So when you are setting a goal, you get a little reward from achieving the goal, but you also get a reward in the pursuit of the goal. So if you look at, so if you're seeking, do you know, if you're going after your dinner, there is a bit of a, do you know, there's a bit of a kick in the chase. And there's also the consummatory reward at the end where you're actually sitting down, having your dinner. Now, this is called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Now, what happens there, dopamine, the actual chemical formula is the same the whole way along. There's a synthesis. Dopamine and adrenaline are pretty much in the same molecule, just a couple of different tweaks in between. That's the synthesis path. So it's interesting that fight or flight and reward are pretty much the same thing in the human biology. So the way the body is set up is when you're running after your dinner, i.e. setting up a goal, sometimes danger can come and somebody's chasing you, so you could become somebody else's dinner. And that's where, do you remember the amygdala that I was showing you there? That guy kicks in, you get running. That response is only designed to last maybe 3 or 4 minutes, in which case you've either caught your dinner or you're done. But either way, it's over. But what we do in modern life, I suppose as a species we've evolved, we've made our lives better. We can build lovely buildings like this. We get farmers to make our food for us, and we do what we do. So we've made life better, but we've made life a lot more complicated. And that stress response, that 3-minute stress response, we've turned that into a 30-year stress response, i.e. paying a mortgage. So it's very important that when you're when you are choosing your life path, that you choose something that really leans into your own personal values, that you're comfortable with. Because let's face it, if you're in a job you really, really hate and you're not doing what you like, you can go home, you can be shouty with the kids, you can be, just all sorts of things happen. So that's the importance of it. Physiologically also, when adrenaline kicks in, it releases cortisol. In small doses, fine. Continuous large doses, absolutely toxic and poisonous to the body. It causes all sorts of problems. You can end up with diabetes, you can end up overeating, undereating, not sleeping. So these are the things. So in starting again to find out what's right for you, the most important person to look at is me, yourself. You need to start with yourself. So what does right look like? Well, right looks like different things to different people, depending on where you are in the world and depending on how your personality is made up of. And free will, again, I spoke about that at the start. You have a free will to a certain degree, but it's not quite as easy just to find out what you really should be doing. Deep thought takes a lot of work. So the starting point, define your reality as it is. Now, actually, have you got your phones on? You have your phone on. Take out your phones. There's a few resources I want to point you to. In defining your own reality, look up and just bookmark AuthenticHappiness.org. You all have it? So that's the website of Dr. Martin Seligman of Penn University. He's the grandfather of positive psychology, and he wants that website free to use for a lot of people, for everybody and anybody. So it's a fantastic free resource. Now, there's one test on there. Now, why I want you to bookmark it is because you do actually have to register and log in and all that. But the fantastic thing about that is you can track your progress then as you go on your goal path. The one test in there, if you have a pen and paper, it's called the VIA Character Strength Inventory. So VIA. You've heard of that, have you? Yeah, VIA Character Strength Index, it's a fantastic place to start. Now, there's lots and lots of other tests there that you can do on yourself as well. But the Character Strength Index, or inventory, that's a good place to start defining your own reality. create a vision, mission, and value statement for yourself. So you're all in employment at the moment or thinking of returning. So most people, particularly in a corporate work environment, you have a mission statement. Is that correct? You're nodding the head. Do you know your mission statement? Thereabouts. I'm actually just going to ask you, nod your head or shake your head. Does the company's mission statement align with your own values? So it should. I'll chat to you afterwards. Essentially what that sort of statement is, draw it up for yourself there. So your vision, that's what you want your life to look like in a set period from now. So 3 to 5 years' time, how do you want your life to look? 10 years' time, how do you want your life to look? Your mission, that's essentially the map. That's the road map that's going to take you there. So the career that you take in life, so that's your work career and your outside work career. So rearing kids, whatever it is you do outside of work, they all take you to where you want your life to look like. And the values you want to hold while you pursue that vision. Engage in a little bit of design thinking. Now, a good place to start in design thinking is if you are totally lost or if you're half lost, maybe what you could do is design a couple of alternative futures for yourself. Write them down, draw up the pros and the cons of your alternative futures. Now, again, do you remember the amygdala that I showed you there? It's important when you are drawing up your future that you foreshadow that with fear as well. There was the American swimmer, his name completely escapes me now. He won 8 Olympic gold medals. Anybody remember his name? He won 8 gold medals, but on his final swim, his 8th swim, he jumped into the water. His goggles fogged up and filled with water. He still won the race. How did he do that? He'd actually foreshadowed it with the fear. He knew exactly what would happen if this particular thing happened. And as it happened, it did happen on this particular race. So because he'd already foreshadowed failure, essentially, he thought he would fail, but because he'd practiced it in his head, he knew to keep ploughing along, you know, that it was only water. But what can happen is when something unexpected happens, so do you remember the hippocampus that I showed you? Your schema tells you you're going to jump into the water, you're going to swim 20 meters that way and 20 meters back that way. That's the way your hippocampus is set up. That's called your schema. But the water filling the goggles, that's not in your schema. So the amygdala can shut the rest of the brain down and you stop. But because he'd foreshadowed it and he knew what was happening, he kept doing his lengths. So realistically, what right looks like is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal for you. So really it's about the journey, because let's face it, folks, there's a few young folks in the audience, and the oldest swinger in town here. The only destination is your demise. Would everybody agree with that? It's that, like, when it's the end, it's the end. Everything else is about the journey. So you really, when you are pursuing your career, your vision, mission, values, it is about the journey, and it's important that you enjoy that journey. I mean, I'm just thinking of the people in Twitter today. And it's not necessarily Twitter. You could be working at the coffee shop and the coffee shop closes down. If you lose your job, that's a kick in the stomach. But if you hate that job and you look back and you say, what the hell was it all for? Do you know? Whereas at least, and that can create problems in your own mental health then as well, that, you know, you start going hard on yourself. That can turn into a little bit of a drinking problem, and all of a sudden your life starts spiraling out of control, do you know? Whereas if you're in a job that you do like and you lose it, well, you're still in a positive place and you have a better foot to kick off from. You're never too old, never too young. So, as a student in Trinity at the moment, I'm very proud to say that an 84-year-old lady defended her PhD yesterday. I've actually written her name down here. What was her name? Mary Jarman Pyle. She's probably in the newspapers today. Her PhD was Harry Potter studies. So, yeah, it sounds funny, but if you look at Harry Potter, world famous, works everywhere with all ages, why is that so? Psychologically, Harry Potter is a true story. He strengthens his own self, his own character by going to really dark places. He confronts things, he builds himself up. There's a lot of magic. There's a lot of magic out there in the world. I mean, the fact that you exist today is a miracle in itself. It's magic as well. So, do you know, this lady at the age of 84 doing a PhD in Harry Potter studies, do you know, you can actually do what you want. Now, I'm going to leave you today with a little phrase by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. Has anybody ever heard of him? I had a choice today. Nassim Taleb is actually in Kilkenny right now at this very minute, and I was saying, Jesus, will I come to Cork or will I go to Kilkenny's? But it's actually an honour to be here with yourselves today. But Nassim Taleb, wind extinguishes a candle and energizes a fire. You need to be the fire and wish for the wind. Because, do you know, the right amount of stress is very good. It's very important in your life as well to drive you forward. The little bit of fear drives you forward because as a species, we're good at avoidance and we're good at pursuing things. Now, has anybody got any questions at all? Yous are all very quiet. Listen, thank you so much, folks. And anybody that wants to drop in and talk to me, I'm in the clinic for the rest of the day down the side as well. Thank you very much, folks, and enjoy your journey.